beware of the French people because they held the king, then they cut off his head.
He's even present in the Polish national anthem.
Oh.
I don't know if you know this.
I did not know that. For instance, when the first issues of Spider-Man were printed in France, they had to remove the mask.
Yeah.
Yes, there's no ugly win. There's just a win.
Yeah, that's very American things to do.
Yeah. And we have this concept of moral victory.
What is it?
It is called...
I welcome you to Tabletop RPGs in France. It is a series in which we learn about the different countries and cultures and how do we play tabletop RPGs. I am Mathieu from Polish channel Dobre Rzuty, with an English-speaking version of a channel, Polishing RPGs. And with me, I have a guest.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
I'm Mathieu. Mathieu, you call me whatever suits you best. I'm from France, from Normandy. I live in Rouen, where Joan of Arc was burned by those English. And
Was it English or Burgundians?
Oh, no, English, definitely.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Definitely. And I co-run a YouTube channel dedicated to tabletop role-playing games in France. We have something like 20,000 subscribers. And we produce 3 shows or 3 videos a week. We have live shows. We have plenty of things. Too much because that's why I'm tired now.
I see. Yeah, that sounds familiar because so you have been recommended by the internet.
Oh,
so the history is we did a poll among our patrons, like what country do they want to listen about next on the series, and France has won. India was second, and Scandinavian countries in the distant third, but France was first. So here we are, France, and I think I've asked on Reddit. I have translated role-playing games by Google Translate, like jeu de rôle.
Jeu de rôle, yeah.
Yeah, I found out this term, and I've been searching it in the internet and on the Reddit. Someone recommended you.
Oh, right. Thank you, the internet.
Yeah, so here we are, and it sounds familiar because our channel seems to be similar. So we have 5 people in the crew. We do a lot of stuff. We do produce like a lot of different shows. I guess we're smaller. We have like smaller budget, but the principle seems the same. So I instantly felt some kind of connection. Like, okay, I get it. Okay.
Yeah, we have. I've been playing for now 35 years, I would say, and I still have some of the stuff I bought or my parents bought when I was a teenager. I lost some, I sold some. We all have these stories. And it has been now 7 years that I've been doing this. And it's great because what we want to do and what I want to do is just to make a bridge between the first generation and the new generation. This new generation plays differently. And they don't have the notion of history of role-playing games, and they don't need it. But something I find a little bit saddening is that once we, as an older generation, are gone, you'll have all these stories and the history of role-playing games in France, that will go away. And this is why we want to talk about it, so people are aware of it.
Yeah, we did something similar for now. I did a couple of podcasts with people who were there in Poland when RPG started. So we have some interviews about the history, how it started. Again, like it's interesting history. People played differently. People thought about games differently. And again, nowadays there's a risk of it being covered under basically D&D.
Yeah.
D&D 5th edition. It's not only that in Poland. There are some other games, but in many ways, it's...
If you go to the United States, you'll find D&D everywhere. And people don't say, "Do you play tabletop role-playing games?" They'll say, "Do you play D&D?"
Yeah, do you play
That
D&D?
would be the name. Call of Cthulhu, which is very popular in France, is not the game that everyone will know about, but everyone will know a D&D. And you see, this is a perfect example.
Okay.
And I play.
By the way,
D&D.
I also have a decorative drinking mug. It's
yours is more beautiful, and
oh, thank you.
You have this. I play D&D. I have we produce a weekly podcast on D&D on the Rôliste TV, and we talk not about how to kill someone in 2 rounds. We talk about the heroes in D&D, or we talk about the various settings. But what I like in D&D with D&D is the history of the game, the history of how the game was published. I'm not such a fan of the scenarios, but I'm a fan of the settings. But I have to say that fightings are boring, especially late at night, and especially when you're above level 8. It's a game I love to hate. I'll say that.
I understand it, yeah, very much. Also, the history of D&D is super... It's complicated first, I would say.
This is what I like. This is what I like. And I have my... this is, for instance, the player's handbook.
Okay.
Of the 3.5. No, that's the 3.5 in French. And then I go on drive through RPG and to print this.
Ooh.
This is what I like. This the early beginnings. I mean, look at the drawings. Look at the art. It's like someone from your high school just drawing it, but it's beautiful. It's full of soul. It really has something. And now a lot has changed. A lot has changed. Sorry. And it's this new edition, this 5e edition, is not for the older players. It's for a new generation. And once you understand that, once you get that, you get less frustrated.
Yeah, D&D does seem to change a lot, edition to edition. It's not really the same game.
It's not, definitely.
Yeah, especially
not.
Between first, whatever you call first edition and the 5th edition, it's totally different game. But even like 3rd and 5th, it's similar in many ways, but I think I call it the 3rd edition is more like a fantasy game, like a more classic fantasy game. It's, I guess, it's still a broad genre, fantasy games, but a genre when you would depart on a fantasy adventure as a hero who would participate. But 5th edition, it's superhero. It's not really hero anymore. I feel like the influence is different.
It's very difficult to die in 5th edition.
Yeah.
And that's on purpose. And this is something I'm pretty sure of. In video games, you have the story mode, where basically you just play, but you will never die. And they tend to go in D&D to go this way. So they've removed everything that can be shocking. They removed everything that can be too dangerous. And once you're above level 8, I would say it's very difficult to kill you. And it's that's why it's a different game. You have this supplement, Witchlight. I don't remember the full title, but you can play it without a single fight. All the encounters can be resolved through social interaction. So it's not always a fight. And this is something I like. And Witchlight is a very good supplement. But overall, it's they want you to be focused on the table and not to be reading every 5 minutes. Oh, look at the rule book because I want to check if this thing is possible or not. They don't want that anymore. But yeah, it's the first supplements were walking a line between the older generation and the new generation, but definitely the latest supplements are clearly going forward to the future. And that's a good thing, because I think that role-playing games were created in 1974. When you take Call of Cthulhu, when you take Dungeons and Dragons, and if you take Vampire the Masquerade apart, it means that basically everything was created in the first 15 years. And I think
in some ways,
that it says a lot that you still have the same games reprinted over and over again. And for instance, I'm a huge fan of Call of Cthulhu and the Mask of Nyarlathotep. It's impossible to pronounce in English. You see, as much as I like this and I love this campaign, I am like, okay, I am 20 years old. What is the campaign that will be etched in my mind? That has been published 5 years ago or 10 years ago, because the masks have been published. I think it's the first version was 1986, 87, something. Oh, I think it's 86 or 7. Wow, it's more than 35 years ago. Yes, it's 35 years ago, and this is something that role-playing games and the comic book industry is also facing the same problem, to have new stories for a new audience and not having the same old recipes that will be published in a much more beautiful setting or encasing, I would say. But it's still the same thing. And in France, we had, so now it's a little bit over, but you had a trend of having all the games that you used to play in the 80s or in the 90s published again. And that was not good for having a new pool of players, the ones that are around 30, not the ones that are more above 40 and above 50.
Yeah, interesting. Seems similar to what happened in Poland. I'm not sure. Okay, I'm learning. With the series, I'm learning how global some things were. So in Poland, RPGs seemed to die out around 2005 and have been quiet for around 15 years.
That's the same.
Yeah, it seems that this seems global.
Magic.
And and
that's with Magic the Gathering.
Is it? You think it's Magic the Gathering?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh, really?
Because
interesting. Okay, I haven't had that explanation before. My main explanation would be video games, actually, and MMOs.
Yeah. So of course, video games were here, but the Switch was Magic.
Okay.
And then from Magic there, because MMOs were not did not exist at the time. But you have this period, and
2005, like they start to appear.
Yeah,
like?
It's a little bit earlier. When I'm talking about Magic, but you had this new. I mean, everyone all of a sudden, you could play with one friend, not having 6 of them, even if at the time we had time, and you also, it was not expensive. You didn't have a 300-page book to read. And then you had this pokerish thing when you could trade cards and you could even lose cards at the early beginnings. So, and in France, we also had a TV show where someone just frontally attacked role-playing games. And it created a very bad reputation concerning role-playing games, and we even had there was a teenager who committed suicide, and that was because of role-playing games. That was not because he had moved. That was not because he was gay but he could not come out. That was not because his parents were divorcing. That was role-playing games. So it's you had these two elements, but Magic in France was clearly the beginning of the downfall. And what I really like, of course, and then you had video games, but role-playing games are now coming back in France for, I think, a few reasons. The first one is that people who used to play now have children, grown-up children, and they want to make want to play with them. That's the first one. And the second one, and I think that's some poetic justice, it's role-playing games where they were exposed as bad for teenagers because these teenagers were together and they were inventing stories. And role-playing games now are trendy again because teenagers are together again, inventing stories without a screen. And the social aspect of role-playing games that had been destroyed by the fact that even if it was an MMORPG, you were still alone in front of your screen.
Yeah.
The fact that you were together all over again, that, oh, look, everyone, oh, they are together and they are just inventing worlds. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. It seems the board games have... in Poland, at least, board games were the first wave of this, and I think tabletop RPGs rode the wave a couple of years later.
Yes.
Maybe it was... maybe social media just pushed some people over the line, like, okay, I have enough of the social interactions over the internet. Let's meet and play a game that's physical, because we have all the screens we want. So
yes, you have this very famous commercial that was for D&D 4th edition, where you have a picture of someone like that in a basement, and the slogan was, if you want to pretend to be an elf, at least do it with some friends. And that
was it the French commercial?
No, that was an American one. You can just you can look for it. They did 2 or 3 of them, and that's the very reason why RPGs went away, and that's the very reason why they came back. Also, what really helped was that most of the teenagers who used to play role-playing games now have jobs with a certain power. They can decide of things. This is why people, just actors, say, oh, I used to play role-playing games. You have Stranger Things. It's not this shame anymore. You can say that you like to play role-playing games. And that really helps, because it's not... in French, you see, role-playing games is jeu de rôle. If you pronounce it quite quickly, it says jeu de rôle, which means funny games.
Okay.
And I remember clearly people not being able to understand what I was doing, and they say, "What are you funny games? Are you telling jokes?" And I said, "No, I'm not. This is jeu de rôle." And it was very difficult to explain what a role-playing game was, unless you could have a glimpse at a table, and then in a snap you could understand what it was. But role-playing games are difficult just to describe. And now with actual plays, when we have people contacting us saying, "Can you explain to me what's a role-playing game?" And they say, "Okay, just go and see this actual play, and you'll understand."
Yeah, this helps for sure. Although I feel like improvisational comedy, or just improv, also got more popular, and it seems for a lot of people will know about improv, so it's easy for them to understand role-playing games, because you basically add storytelling and dice and character sheets, and
now people know what it is. It's when we were in the 80s, when I was 20. Now, what I remember, because the term role-playing game was stolen by video games, and I remember that was around 2005, 2010. Yeah, no, I would say 2005. And I was talking with someone, and I said, "Oh, I love role-playing games." And he said to me, "On which console?"
Yeah.
And that's when I realized it's and that's this very period where the term pen and paper role-playing game was added. Because the term NPC and all of that just was stolen by video games. And of course...
And it's funny, because video games got it from the pen and paper version of it.
Yes, and because most of the creators at the time switched from role-playing games to video games. Just when you think about Ian Livingstone, the sorcerer with the fantasy games, fighting fantasy games, Ian Livingstone, he created Lara Croft. It just he created Eidos. So he went from Games Workshop to video games. Gygax did so with not a lot of success, but it's you had this bridge.
Okay, so speaking of history, so you say you started. Okay, so two questions: like, how did you start playing RPGs? Like, what was your first game? When was it? And maybe just initiation au jeu
d'aventure. This is the Black Eye Schwarze Auge, and this game was published in so this is the box, and so now it's empty, and it's you see it's quite damaged. So what started everything was it you have a publisher, the Gallimard, the biggest in France. They started to produce fighting fantasy books, translating them. So this is Lone Wolf, for instance, and they had. It was always called un livre dont vous êtes le héros, a book you are the hero of. But they also decided to publish in this very strange box a role-playing game, and it's not written a book; it's written a game. And this is how everything started in France, because all these. All the books were very popular. You could find them in high schools, middle schools. Teachers loved them because it was a huge boost to get your students reading. And if you were outside of Paris, you could have them in every bookshop. So this is why it was so. I would say 70% of people say, "Oh, I remember. I started with that." In Paris, you had access to hobby stores, so you could buy Dungeons and Dragons. You could buy games that were imported, and then I would say, it's late 80s. You would have hobby store everywhere, having English book. And this is how everything started. And games were like Call of Cthulhu were translated, Dungeons and Dragons, of course, and of course a ton of other games I don't remember of course. I'll just try to find some older ones. But Call of Cthulhu. You had the Rune Quests. We had everything, nearly everything. And then if you could not, you would go to a store in Paris. I remember there was a magazine and you had everything the store was selling. And you were like, wow, it must be like a supermarket. And you would come to the store and think, that's very small. And it's there were the golden years. I'm an English teacher because of role-playing games. Because for my first trip to England, I bought... their version of Rune.
By the way, that explains your accent.
Yeah, thank you. And it's and now in around I would say 10 years later, around 2000, you would, or 2005 once again, you would go to a shop outside of Paris, but without you would not find any English versions anymore. That was just French production, and everything just dropped.
Yeah, so, couple of interesting things. So, first of all, what year was the tabletop role-playing games were introduced to France? More or less.
More or less, I would say, I don't have the copyright here. I would say it's, for everyone, mainstream, I would say 1986, 1985.
Okay, so around 10 years after the hobby started in US. Although hobby started in US in the beginning, I guess, was 20 people. So it took some time for the hobby to actually grow.
And the funny part as well is it's here when you read the summary, they say adventure game. They don't say role-playing game. And there's a game master. This is what they say, but the opening line is, let's translate. Who has never dreamt of being an adventurer, a fearsome warrior, or a fantastic magician? And what I like is that they use different gender. They say an aventurière ou un aventurier, a female adventurer or a male adventurer. This is
French is a gendered language, right?
Yes, okay. A lot.
I guess pretty much all the European languages except for English are gendered languages.
Yes, and this creates some problems with the translation we could have in French, especially when I'm thinking about the White Wolf games such as Vampire the Masquerade, where the French version just erased the fact that players were a she. Or was the player or the game master? I don't remember, but one of them was a she in English, and it was completely erased in French.
Yeah, although English, it's an interesting case because English is it doesn't have gendered nouns. Although when you speak about people, you then would use a pronoun in some context, like you would have to. Like he or she, like there's no neutral one. So
yes, they would now. They say there. They say they, or everyone take their hat because it's his or her. It's the now they do that. But you see that. So the expression, the phrase role-playing games was not the phrase that you could find.
So like adventure games was at the beginning.
Games.
Okay,
and I remember I was so impressed by this cover. And it was the time when you had the fighting fantasy games books, and they were huge success. And that was in the same department, so you had all the books, and then you could find that just next to them. And they even translated Pendragon. The translation was a complete nightmare and disaster, and then they stopped because the game did not. That was not a success.
Yeah,
but the production was really lousy.
Yeah, but the game you're showing, this is Black Eye.
Yes, this is Black Eye.
This is Das Schwarze Auge. This is a German game.
Yes, your German accent is far better than mine. Yes.
Thank you. So was the first major popular game in France? Did it come from Germany?
Yes.
That's a plot twist I wouldn't expect.
Yes, and just to tell you, this is Gallimard, but you had another version produced by Schmidt that was available in all the toy stores. So at the time, you could find Schwarze Auge in French, but in two versions.
Okay. What a
and
twist.
I've got Havana over there, and which was translated in French. But this version, the Gallimard one, was, of course, the most popular because you could find it everywhere.
Okay, so is it the case that in the in the 80s you have a French translation of the Black Eye, and also you have in the beginning English translations, not translated Dungeons and Dragons, or how fast was
you
D&D
would have
translated?
Since I have my player's handbook here, you would go to the shop and you would buy it.
Okay,
and,
it was in English.
It was in English.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So my question, the question I'm heading towards is how strong is the French language patriotism or just preference? So,
in general, French are very bad at English.
Okay.
Speaking and writing, and we have a very sad tendency now to have some many games, French role-playing games, are titled in English. The Heist, Roll and Play, and I don't like that because.
But the content is French.
The content is French, but it will never be translated, so it's not a franchise. And
I see. Okay, so French. Okay.
because in France you have this tendency to love using English words.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's some sort of how to say that. I don't want to offend anyone, but it's like to be a poseur. It's like to be, oh, you know, kind of posh. Like, yeah, my English is terrible, but I will use an English title. And
but it's this, Japanese do the same thing.
Yes,
I did some video game translations, and I've learned that actually when you translate a video game into Japanese, you don't want to translate all the words. that was my default assumption. Like, you know, if we're doing translation, but no, like Japanese gamers want to have some English in their games, a little bit, like in the menus or whatever. It's considered cool.
Yeah, this is let's say I read quite regularly the sentence, "Oh yeah, that sounds better in English." Actually, it does not, because it means that you doesn't translate it the right way, or because you're used to hearing it in English.
Mm-hmm.
But this is especially because also you see, I'm an English teacher, but I want to advocate the use of the French language, and because also the translations are not very accurate, and the quality of the French translations are not always very good. It's not always very good. You have some very good translators, but I know that when I get, because I have the names, I know the names, and I know that, okay, this is this one that will do it. Well, just I know that I won't be satisfied, and it never misses. But of course, that's because I love and I study English. I mean, if you just don't care about English or sometimes French, I mean, you'll understand the game. Of course, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but it's really I'm saddened by the fact that you have games now that will have, I mean, something like around 300 copies of it, and it's written. The title is in English. You see, why is that?
Yeah.
French language have the capacity of having a French words. Trust me.
Yeah,
but that's it. That's
yeah, and again, interesting, because I've known the French to be actually pretty protective of a French language, and of a belief that English, you know, it will pass. French should be the language of the world. Lingua franca, again, the language of the Franks ruling the world.
It's that's a paradox, because this is what they say. We need to keep our language, but our government uses English words all the time. For instance, with COVID-19, instead of saying foyer, they said cluster all the time. And journalists don't translate words anymore. So this is how it comes to the French language, because they read the news in English or they talk in English somewhere. And also the internet. You have all these internet slang and lingo that is used, and people use it without really thinking. And this is how it comes. And most of the time it is used the wrong way. For instance, I see now everywhere, oh, it's a red flag for me. But for the French, red flag means it's a complete no. It's a definitive no. Having a red flag is no, it's a warning. It's not a definitive no. So you see, the language is, of course, with the internet, the number of English words in the French language has skyrocketed, really. And I have some American friends coming to France and telling me that they were quite disappointed because of all the words in English in stores or everywhere. I wanted to have. They said to me, I wanted to read French and I wanted to not to understand it. But now the word is in English, and sometimes not a really appropriate English. So that's life. That's how things are. But now the general topic is to be inclusive, and inclusivity starts with your own language. Because, for instance, you have a role-playing game called The Sprawl, And but the sprawl, I mean, even English people don't know what a sprawl is. And if you're not into cyberpunk, and I have a interface 2.0, and in the index and glossary, you have the explanation of sprawl. That's one of the reasons why you need sometimes English words, but we have the French words. For instance, for the way you interpret your characters, now they say role play. Ah, le roleplay était bon. No, the interpretation, l'interprétation était bonne, and that does the trick.
Okay, yeah, I see. Again, similar, I guess, globalization. I guess this would be similar over all of Europe. I think Polish language seems to eat up a lot of words, like incorporates words pretty quickly. I guess it's maybe softened because the words are Polonized, so you would use the Polish grammar to say them, so they would change.
You have the same in France. They use it. Yeah.
Okay, do you have like it's either like a government body or some council or whatever that would be, damn, in Poland it's Rada Języka Polskiego, so like a council of Polish language. It's like official group that has some authority in saying what's proper Polish and what's not.
So they have no authority. They are called l'Académie Française, but they tend not to...
they can't enforce it by law, but if there's one organization you would ask what's proper Polish, that would be them.
They'll give some advice of using this word and not that one, and that's it. And sometimes they're quite old, and the word they propose to use is completely out of context, or you think that they don't have the all the knowledge of the context of the word. So, the French language is not about to die, but sometimes clearly the fact of using an English word is the way to have an easier access to things for people writing in role-playing games. So I'll put the word in English, and assuming that everyone understands English, and I have a scoop. Just that's not because you watch Netflix with English subtitles on, and actually you don't because you use French ones. That you're good in English. That's the.
Yeah, maybe this is the English slowly taking revenge on France, because all the French words they have in their language.
Yeah, but that was 1,000 years ago.
The English are patient, I guess. They're using the Americans to do it as a typical British fashion.
And this is what I was about to add. It's when we say English words, we should not say that. We should say American English words, because even the English, British, the evil ones, even them. I mean, there was an article in the Telegraph last week about how they were fighting to preserve and to keep some British phrases and British grammar. So it's everywhere. And in Australia, that's the same as well.
Those Americans and their empires.
Most of my passion's coming from America, but I don't want to have everything being American.
I think Europe overall, like everyone in Europe, seems to have a love-hate relationship with Americans. You cannot just love them; you can just hate them.
Yes,
it's always mixed.
Definitely.
Okay, France and RPGs in France. I'm wondering. So, cultures of play and styles of play. So, what's I guess the first question would be like, what's mainstream in France? What are the most popular games that French gamers are just everyone knows?
You have Call of Cthulhu, which is
it first? Is it the most popular?
No, I would say the Dungeons and Dragons, of course, is the first. Even if all the players really hate this new version. Call of Cthulhu is very, very popular, and we can see that because each time we release a video with Call of Cthulhu, just the views are quite high. And you also have it's difficult to say because we don't have any official polls, and if, for instance, Rôliste TV, we do one. I mean, perhaps it will be more accurate than others, but because we tend to have older players, because the general population of role-playing gamers or of players is getting older. I will say that. But it's you have Call of Cthulhu. You have I'm trying to. Perhaps it will be easier for me to say that in the French style of French playing style, we are not that into dungeons.
Okay.
Just having to go through the dungeon to get the answer to one question, we'll do once, but when you read some Pathfinder campaigns, okay, so
Back to the dungeon, yes.
and he agrees with you, and he'll support you. Okay, good. And that's, I would say, the one of the typical way of playing in France. That we love dungeons, but we're not that fan of dungeons to have them every when you have to roll for wandering monsters every 10 minutes. This is not something we like, and I think that we have a big French production, very big production, which also we have some fragments. You don't have one game to rule them all, I would say. We have many games that are played. The World of Darkness Vampire was very popular as well, even if the translation was appalling. And I'm trying to think about... And you have a game like RuneQuest, Shadowrun, very popular as well, and Cyberpunk. But I'm more a Team Cyberpunk guy.
This reminds me of a point I thought about earlier. So first of all, if you don't like dungeons, then I guess you just play dragons. Haha, badumch.
But that's not a play.
But
but
the game, like The Dream of a Dragon, actually, like it makes sense. And it's okay. So before we started, like the official podcast, you showed me the Dream of a Dragon game.
Yes.
And this sounds very much like Polish game. Okay, it was in Polish, but popular in Poland, Earthdawn.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. But actually,
maybe the game isn't that similar, but some dynamics in Poland were similar. So first of all, this is a game that many people played in Poland during the 90s, the Earthdawn. And recently it returned. I guess we would argue fueled a lot by nostalgia. So people who bought Earthdawn were not the new players; they were the old players who now have the money, and they kickstarted a pretty successful
Same in
Kickstarter.
France. Same is France.
Yeah,
To me, it's a very French game. It's a very good game, and you see, you have the medieval aspect, you have the fantasy, but you don't have all these fightings.
Okay.
It's just for the pleasure of escapism. You see, if I read the summary is, don't we all dream at night? Don't we all create a world? A different world, and which lasts as long as your dream lasts. And basically, the dream is just a session. It's just a scenario. And of course, you have experience. You go from one place to another. But it's not everyone liked it. Not everyone liked it because some people did not like the lack of Dungeons and Dragons action. It's very French. I know that there was a translation in English that was implemented. But that was a long time ago. That was last century. This is, you see, it's Empire Galactique. See, with all the...
nice, classic, old school
and
fantasy art.
This one was written by someone who died a few years ago, because now everyone is getting older. And that one was in 1984. 1984, and this is how you could find French role-playing games, and that was by a mainstream Robert Laffont mainstream publisher. And he did several of them, and that's the very early on you had from the outset of from the outset, you had French role-playing games.
Mm-hmm.
So that led to the fact that there was not one game, one only, and one game and only one. You had several of them, and of course, chief among them was L'Œil Noir, because you could have it everywhere. You could buy it everywhere.
Okay. What would the typical session look like? And of course, okay, many cultures of play, but specifically, so you mentioned that you don't like dungeons. So in this style of play, let's say you're playing The Dream of a Dragon, and this is a group that, doesn't like the dungeons fighting style. What would the game look like?
Oh, it's I mean, just you had jokes. You had. I mean, just I don't think that would be. There wouldn't be that of a difference.
Mm-hmm. But what would it be like inside the? What would happen in fiction? I would say. So, okay, let's say a typical Dungeons and Dragons game. You meet at a tavern. You have 20 minutes in the tavern. Then someone gives you a quest in some way in the beginning. Then you maybe do some investigation. You do maybe an encounter that lasts an hour. More investigation, talking, more encounters, maybe some dungeon. Along the way, you entered a dungeon somehow. And then there's a boss encounter, gold experience, congratulations, leveling up, next session, again, tavern, quest. So this would be a typical D&D game. Of course, it can still play differently in just social dynamics.
I see what you mean. I'm just reading to find this is a summary of one scenario. It's which is actually called "For Whom the Bell Tolls." Players, actually, the players were called the Travelers. Travelers have dreamt of a bell, of a morning bell, and they want to hear it again. And they'll try. Yeah, and what the purpose in this story, what they want to do, they want to prevent it from ringing. So they have to find who was about to die, or they had to prevent the catastrophe that would lead to this bell ringing. And there'll be some. It doesn't mean. See, you have a tower. You have the tower for the princess. You have some fighting. You have the block stats, the stat blocks. But this is how things were. I'll try just to find another.
Okay, so still a mostly. Okay, first of all, what I'm hearing is this is a scenario. So you would mostly play scenarios. The game master would have a scenario, either from a book or the one he or she prepared himself or herself. Okay, and then, so you're saying that the players have dreamt about the bell. So is the premise already established? Like, when you start, you have dreamt about a bell, this is what you have to do.
Yeah. But that's, let's say...
So there's no stranger and there's no accepting the quest, like the quest is in the premise of the game.
Actually, yes. No, then this is... So once again, Rêve de Dragon was very popular. It's not that popular anymore. It's not played anymore by the younger players. But it's the... You see, this is all the scenarios, so most of them that were compiled in the book. And the title is Invitation au voyage, basically.
Invitation to a journey?
Yes. So you see, that's the name. So you have everything here. And it starts, why is this house haunted? Why are all the women in this village crying? All these questions and many others you'll try to resolve them, to answer them. It's very poetic. And that was another one. And there was, for instance, another game called Malefice, which took place right after the First World War. And it could be fantastical or it could be scientific. And you would have gargoyles. And it was Le Fantastique Français. You had all these games and they were not that focused on systems. And and this is why you had, of course, less games, but you had a lot of French products, and that's still the same now. You have huge French. You have very popular French games that are played, and there's one which is called Night, English title, Night, and that's a retelling of the Arthurian legend, but it's in a post-apocalyptic world. So the world is gone, and they're fighting they're fighting the darkness. Cities are in domes, under domes, and you have armors, and you have some sort of a reconstitution of the round table.
Okay, I see. It seems, from what you're telling me, it seems to be more about the story, I guess, but like more explicitly about story, and especially the adventure exploration aspect. So it seems that the typical village, goblins, dungeon, quest, gold experience repeat would seem boring to most, like would be, even I would expect there would be some disdain for this style of play. That, like, where's the adventure? Where's the mysticism? Where's the poetry?
It's the... I would say, of course, once again, I'm painting with a broad brush or a large brush. It's the... I'll have to check for this expression. It's the... we tend to... the mechanical aspect of killing XPs and go on, it's something... Very early on, I would say you had a divide, and it was reinforced when games such as Vampire appeared. When Vampire the Masquerade appeared, you clearly had, I would not say a gap, but sometimes a chasm between the players playing the Masquerade, like, okay, this is a more mature style of play, and being quite fed up with all the dungeons. And because when you think about Dungeons and Dragons, what are the greatest scenarios? And just because most of them just revolve around killing someone and just exploring somewhere. And why was it striking? Because your opponents was very powerful. And this is, of course, once again, it's broadly speaking. But I know, I, for one, without Vampire, I would have stopped playing because I was quite bored. That was always the same stuff. And all of a sudden, Vampire came and a new world opened. I'm a huge comic book fan. I'm a huge Neil Gaiman fan. And all of a sudden, you had this convergence of more mature interests. And so I played a campaign for 17 years.
Holy shit.
Yes, Vampire the Masquerade that I wrote. And that's when I stopped it, because I was so into the world of darkness that I was not the same, and I wanted something lighter. And this is how I came back to Dungeons and Dragons, to these beautiful, foolish worlds of Dungeons and Dragons. And I came back to this route, but it's when, for instance, we in France, I think we prefer the aesthetic part. This is, for instance, when you have the game master screens, we hate it when you have numbers on the player's side. We think it's completely stupid. We want the beautiful picture. We don't want the name of the game on the screen, because we think it's not relevant, because we know the game we're playing. We know the name. And I would say that if we have to choose between story and system, story will be more important.
Okay, yeah, I see. Was not rolling dice during game sessions a bragging rights of some players? Because the discussion, I guess the World of Darkness and Vampire led the charge on the ambitious role-playing focused games. And then I guess, okay, in Poland it would be Warhammer, actually. But
Warhammer, I forgot the game, is a massive hit in France.
Okay.
And because they wanted, they liked it because it is because that's the Dungeons and Dragons, and I would say it's more European in many aspects.
Oh yes,
it's actually European.
The map is pretty much Europe.
Yeah. I completely forgot about it. Of course.
Okay, so while we are on the topic, so Bretonia in Warhammer. Okay, but correct me if I'm wrong, but Bretonia seems to be a mixture of England and France, of all things.
Yeah, so I won't be the best guest talking about Warhammer, because I used to play it when as it started, and then I did not play it anymore. So, and at Rôliste TV, I'm not the one in charge of Warhammer, so I won't be able to answer correctly.
Okay, I see. I just
but what I can say is that the Imperial campaign, it has a superstar status. I mean, just it is considered, if you among all the players, the Imperial campaign, la campagne impériale, is one of the 3 campaigns to be played.
Oh, interesting. Okay, the Imperial campaign. I'm not that into Warhammer myself. I mean, I've played my share bit back in the day. I don't know all the campaigns by heart. I wonder if it's one of the other popular ones, maybe under a different name, but I'm not sure.
It's There's Something Rotten. One of the titles, there's Shakespearean title. There's Something Rotten Behind the Throne of whatever. You had the. I will just give you the name. Basically, I think it was also translated in. It was also
okay. Let's not stay on the topic too long, because I'm not a Warhammer expert myself yet, and I for sure will have Warhammer experts in the comments. So.
Yes, the Enemy Within.
Yeah, okay. Because that was my suspicion. Because the Enemy Within is the most, I guess, most well-known
and this is
campaign.
So in France, it's written the La Campagne Impériale.
Okay, Okay, so my intuition was correct. This is the same campaign. Okay, so Polish. It's okay. So Poland and France is basically the same country. I see. Okay, I mean, culture at least. Interesting. So, So other cultures of play. So I'm interested. You're saying that you're mentioning the story aspect, like the beauty aspect of RPGs, which is interesting. Like this is not the. I guess if of all the countries, I would expect this to appear in, like the France would be first, but like it suits, it works. The aspect is important for RPGs for sure. I would say it's what makes the hobby stand out in many ways. Like role-playing books it's a different type of books. I don't know any other type of books that has like all the crazy illustrations, all the crazy formatting. Yeah, and the boxes you have in France, that just
so this is the deluxe version of a game called Roll and Play. So it needs some explanation. So title is in English. It's basically when the OGL allowed the 5th edition, we had 2 translations and 2 games running under the SRD, running under the 5th edition label. We had Dragon, and there was another one called Heroes and Dragons. But after they ran into some legal issues, and the line had to be discontinued. Then the editor, called Black Book Edition, they started an actual play called Roll and Play, which is the most popular actual play in France. And they released the Roll and Play role-playing game, which is basically a rewriting of Héros et Dragons without the controversial parts, according to Wizards of the Coast. And this is the deluxe version.
Okay.
And just to show you the covers, this is, for instance, the cover. And we have artists, fantastic artists that are hired to illustrate role-playing games. So there are a few reasons for that. The first one being that most of them are funded via crowdfundings. So you need a beautiful picture, otherwise no one will buy it. And it's the nowadays games are beautiful books, and because many people know that they won't play these games.
It has to look nice on the shelf.
Yes, in a way, but they know that they'll read it, perhaps, and at least when they read it, they'll have they'll have a quality time, because beautiful pictures, beautiful binding, and perhaps perchance they'll play it. And this is what we've noticed. It's you have the game you play, you have the game you read now. And at the time, when we were younger, it was inconceivable to buy a game you were not about to play.
Yeah.
But at one point, someone said, "Okay, I know I won't play this game, but I'll buy it." And now that's sadly the majority, the overwhelming majority of games. So you have the game you play, the game you read, and now sadly you have the game you put on your shelf. Because it's here, because it takes some time. It takes some time to read it, and of course it also takes some time to receive it. Most of the time now it's 1 year. You buy something that you forgot about, and then you have an email. Oh, okay, there's an incoming parcel for you, and I don't know where it is now, but we have a game with pirates that was produced in France. Yes, it's here. Pavillon Noir. And you see the black flag, and you see it's in a box, and the illustrations are gorgeous, and you even have a book about piracy, which has more than 700 pages. And it's more like a subject of study than really a game at one point.
Yeah, 700.
Yeah, it's but you see, you have these beautiful books, but and we know that they are not played a lot, because at Rôliste TV, usually, very regularly, we have some polls, and we say, out of the last 3 games that you acquired, how many did you read? How many did you play? And wow, it's depressing. It's really depressing. And these books, because the production tends to give and to lead to massive games, to very thick games. You need time to read it, to find your friends, to find your players, the players who want to play it. And this is the life of a game at one point. The game is to be and I really love your expression, the shelf of the shelf of shame, the shelf of shame. I love it, because that's the point. And we have for instance, we have this publisher, one of the biggest in France, Black Book. They have a crowdfunding every last Tuesday of the month. And they're
like a separate crowdfunding campaign.
Yes, for instance, you had Ptolus.
Okay,
not every week.
Okay, every month. Every month.
But the last Tuesday of every month, bing, you have one. And the production is it doesn't seem to go down. And at one point, we even issued at Rôliste TV a message saying that there are too many games being released. We don't have time to read them all. We don't have time to make a review of them all, because it's too much.
It's almost like the nature of the hobby kind of changed, or like nature of art in some way. So before it was like a hobby of games that you play, and now it seems like most people are patrons. They're not really players; they're patrons of art.
Yeah,
which is
I'm afraid so.
Interesting.
I'm afraid so. It's when Rêve de Dragon came in, it was so I was just to I'm trying to find the number. I mean, just so when Rêve de Dragon was released, so the crowdfunding gained 165,000 euros, and out of them, and now you have very successful crowdfundings, but who actually bought it? As we said, they were the older players, being so happy to have a beautiful copy, not worn out. This is what they wanted. So yeah, there's more money, you have more beautiful books, but even if the number of players is going up, the vast majority of the players are the older players with less time and more money. This is the equation.
I would even suspect that you might have older players who have the money, so they would support Kickstarters of all the games, especially if it's a Kickstarter, because buying is one thing, but supporting it, like if not for me, the game just wouldn't be published, and it has to be published because it's the perfect game from my teenage years. But then I would expect some of those people would buy those games, don't read them, and if they have time to play role-playing games, they would still just play some other game they already know well.
Because they know the rules. And I remember I made a video a few years ago, and I had, and the topic was playing again when you are over 35. And so that was, we have, I think, something like 18,000 views. So, I mean, just everyone was like, oh, it reminds me of so many things. And what I did, the opening of the video was I was reading a catalog of games, which dated back to 1995. And I was just reading the names aloud. And all these names were games that you could find again, which you could find either again or still in a bookstore, in a hobby store. So it shows that except for Vampire the Masquerade and all the White Wolf products, the crux of the production is still the same. And because Roll and Play is Dungeons and Dragons. Call of Cthulhu, we have a new version. It's Warhammer. Warhammer is now available again in France, because when they did it the first time, that was perhaps the worst, one of the worst translations with proofreading ever. So they stopped it, and then we have a new version which is perfect now. And we also have a new player. Free League is a Free League Publishing with Tales from the Loop or Alien, they are very popular, and I expect a lot from them. And because they understood, I think, that games have not to be with a 300-page corpus, that you can play it very quickly after buying the book. They are easy to read, they are fast to read, they just have the minimum amount of information to play. You are not drowned under useless lore, and this is what I like with them. And I have to say that when I receive a review copy of Pathfinder or Free League, I go to Free League first, because I know that it will be faster to read.
Yeah, I've reviewed a bunch of those games. I totally get it. We actually maybe I should say I consider Flea games to be a pretty much representative of a neo-traditional culture of games. What we call it, we call it neo-traditional. So like games with traditional promises and expectations. So you would have a game master, you would go on an adventure, you would play some sort of scenario typically, but those games typically are more just consumer minded in terms of just player minded. A game that's more consciously designed to be played and has more games from the 90s would often expect the player to put in the work, read about the lore, come up with character background on like at least 2 pages. Come on, it's it's a serious hobby. So just put a lot of learn the rules. There's a lot of rules, but guys, if you learn the rules, this game's gonna be amazing. You just have to learn them all. More modern games are like like you should be able to start playing within an hour of starting to read the game. And here's all the help on the character sheets. Character background, just here's 3 options for you. Just pick one you like the most, and off you go.
And this is what you point out is something that we have in France of people saying that, and this is we have all these grumpy players saying, "Oh, nowadays, there are not really rules." And Rêve de Dragon is often used as an example. At the time, we were not afraid. Blah blah. At the time. The thing was
when you were 18 and you had all the free time in the world.
Exactly. Plus, that was the beginning of role-playing games, and we knew that there were no ordinary games. Meaning what? Meaning that even the dice were not the same, and meaning that there was some sort of a challenge of reading complex rules. This is not your Monopoly. It's a role-playing game, for God's sake. And what I do with these grumpy players, and that we have our share, I do, okay, now I want you to read Eclipse Phase, the science fiction game. Fantastic one, but I mean, God, it's just massive. And I want to play in 2 weeks. What will they say? Oh, no, that's too complex. No, I don't have the time. Hey, where are you now? Yeah. So that's really something that this is what I like with Free League. And this is also why we don't have line of products anymore. Basically, you have one role-playing game, one supplement, the game master screen, and that's it. We'll call it a day. Because who has time? Of course, I'm painting with a white brush now, I remember. I'm painting with a white brush, but who has time nowadays? Who has time to read it into... And that's why you have these games to read and not to be played. And the Free League understood that. And when I play with my friends who are younger than me or who only know a limited number of role-playing games. I remember, for instance, we played a session of DC Comics, the Mayfair game. You see, I used the Batman one. And I remember I gave them the 2 tables just to resolve everything, and they were looking at me like, what is it? What is... And to me, it was very easy because I knew it by heart. But... I could see, and there were some experienced players as well. They needed some time to adapt, and we must not forget that when we were younger, we were also trying to understand rules. I mean, Middle Earth role-playing game or Role Master. We tend to forget that we were like, I don't understand this rule, and at the time there was no internet. Now we of course we know the rules because we've been playing these freaking games for 15, 20, 30 years. Of course we know the rules. And that creates, I mean, in the French gaming community, some sort of a line with younger generation saying, we don't want your old games. And the older players saying, these are not really games. Because I also think that with these players being from the first generation, there's this they are doing some gatekeeping. Because they think that they own the genre, they own the art of role-playing games. Because of course for a very long time they were all alone, and all of a sudden now it's very popular. And and they tend to say, no, that's not like this, that should be like that. And of course you have the younger players saying, no, in the indie indie creators, for instance, would say, no, we don't want this. And sometimes it got a little bit heated, foolishly heated, I would say, because there's no school of role-playing games. There's no title in role-playing games. You have no king, you have no earl, you have no dukes. You play the way you want it to be played. That's why. That's what makes it fantastic.
Yeah. Although I've heard some people, even like my friend, believes sort of jokingly, but maybe not really, that you should have a guild of game masters, and you should get licenses or just diplomas, and you would have licensed
living nightmare.
Yeah, licensed game masters who were trained in all the proper skills or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned indie. So indie / story games. So games like Powered by the Apocalypse games, or Forged in the Dark games, or games that are created by the Gauntlet community. So like Hearts of Woolen, Brindlewood Bay, or story games that were created in the early
all the games
2000s.
All the games you mentioned were translated in French. Into French.
Okay, so they are present. Are they popular?
They are very present, especially online. Online, you can print on demand their games. I personally really love what they do, because that's filled with very original ideas. Sometimes you have some hits and misses. But it's a new way of tackling the genre, of tackling role-playing games. It's a new way. Most of them just play remotely. And we have a member of Rôliste TV who's really into that. And I was thinking about her because you mentioned Brindlewood Bay.
So your version of Aurafau. Okay, makes
yeah. It's also when you have conventions now, they have you can see them. This is I love playing games through campaigns. I don't like one shots. So this is why many of these indie games cannot be played on a very long, covering a very long span of time.
Yeah. Or even some of them are designed for one campaign. Although you could argue that even for freely games like Alien, how many games of Alien are gonna play?
Yeah.
How many times are we gonna be surprised that the xenomorph is there?
Yes. And this is why Alien was such a masterpiece, because you think they're here, that the xenomorph is here. You think about it. Oh, it's not here. It will be later on, and sometimes you even forget about it. So yeah, and you have you also have some indie games that are so tightly focused that basically it's just you play turns, and it's really close to a board game. But yeah, we have an award called Le Prix Rôliste with other role-playing game outlets. And we have now this category, but this category, this is the only category where authors have to send us the games, because there are so many games that it's very difficult to keep track of them, and also they have a very tight community, so they don't really advertise. So you need to be on Discord or just being aware all the time, which is not possible.
I thought now that I think of it, I would expect those indie games in general to be popular in France to a significant degree, because if any culture is known of being fond of interesting, experimental, artistic genres, it would be France.
Yeah, it's the
I would expect Italians to create the traditional art and France to create the avant-garde.
This is what I like about the French field of publishing role-playing games. It's the fact that, as I told you, all the games you mentioned have been translated into French. and Fate role-playing game must also be, and I really love Fate. It's all of them has been translated. That's why we have so many games, and there's some fragments. I would say that this the role-playing game scene in France is very fragmented. You have mainstream, and you have this indie scene, which is really something to be proud of. Even if you don't play the games, I love reading them, and I love discovering them because they have. I would just. There's where is it? Too bad. There's a game called Meanwhile in the Subway, and it's basically a map of the subway, and that's the role-playing game.
Okay.
And that's really fun. That's too bad. I don't have it here, but yeah, they want to produce different games, and that's what I love.
Okay. What about OSR?
OSR is very popular as well. We have the French version of Dungeon Crawl Classics. We also
with
have
a nice cover, of course.
Yes, actually, this is the Lankmar one. So this is the French version. This is the French version, Dungeon Crawl Classic.
Okay, yeah, that looks familiar.
Yes, this is the Lankmar boxed set, and we have also the Black Sword Hack with the Murray. Which is the interesting fact is that French authors, French OSR authors, actually they write their games in English. They don't write them in French. They write them for the English-speaking market, for the American market. And the last game they did, and that's too bad, it's out of reach, we were asked, will there be a French version? And I asked the authors, and they said, yes, perhaps, but not by us.
Is Polish video game industries, Polish companies would still do their games English first. But that's, again, it's just where the market is.
Yeah, and, or Free League, just Free League just was
a Swedish company, but still, yeah.
Yes, because they produced in English, and this is how we.
Yeah, and even if you do, if you do translations, because translation is in the best case scenario is just as good as the original.
Yeah.
But it can be worse. So if you want what do you want the original to be the best English?
There was the problem with D Genesis and this role-playing game when it was, I think that was from German to English. The English version had some mistakes, and I knew the translator, and they had to contact them just to be sure of what they meant.
Yeah. A lot of things you talk about is we have a similar thing happened in Poland or something. It's
I think that's as you mentioned the global aspect. I mean, we're in it.
Although I have to do more podcasts, especially with countries outside of Europe, to get a better perspective. But so far, it's a theory I have. We'll see. We'll see if it stands out. Of all the factors between different countries, religion seems to play a part. So countries that were historically Catholic seem to have like some shared aspects of culture. For example, historically Catholic countries seems to be more, I guess, high status. Seems to be people distrust people of high status, because I was surprised that we share this as Poles. We share this trait with Canadians. So when I talked with guys from Canada, from French Canada specifically, yeah. So, and that a typical trope would be for fighting for the underdog, rooting for the underdog, and even if you're underdog, if you rise up and you rise up too high, it's because like, who are you to be above us?
In France, the very definition of a hero is quite mixed, because to us, the hero cannot be the American hero, the one that will save the day. It's
because
not
American hero is a cowboy, pretty much. It's like it's the lone gunman. He comes, solves problem with violence usually.
For instance, when the first issues of Spider-Man were printed in France, they had to remove the mask.
Interesting.
Because for the French authorities, is why is he wearing a mask? Yeah. If you are a good person, you don't need to hide your face. Why are you doing this?
Okay.
And that's and because also all the I would say all these were a part of that was after the war, not for Spider-Man, not immediately after the war, but for a very long time in France, the institutes in charge of all the things published for the youth were communists, and everything coming from the United States was to be taken with not a pinch of salt, but with a shovel, with a spray of salt. And you have this, and for a very long time, so the mask being erased did not last long. But there was also an issue where the Incredible Hulk was smashing a wall, and it was redrawn with a door around him, because so he would not be smashing a wall, he would be smashing a door. He would be entering the room through the door. And it's the French hero is Arsène Lupin. It's the Arsène Lupin is the thief. Sorry, this is the hero. The hero is not, or when you see Les Misérables, Jean Valjean is at first he's a convict. There is this notion in France of not having the bright hero. People who are not into comic books will say that, or I don't want to have a Captain Light. I don't want to have a Superman. It means also I don't have this. I don't want some Manichaeism in my stories. It proved that they don't read Superman a lot, but it's really the way we tend to tackle things in France.
So is it more like outcasts and renegades, or just people from outside the fringes of society?
It's not always, but he's
a hero that's. I think it's more like a European thing as opposed to America. Like Europe is more communal. Like it has to be about the society in the end. Like
in many respects, when you talk about the American hero, is someone you can admire, someone you may admire, but you won't go to the bar to have a drink with Batman or Superman. There's some sort of a distance. Whereas the French hero, Arsène Lupin, hey, we love it because we love him because he does not always respect the rules. And this is a very French thing. It's very French. We have, and that also comes from the French Revolution, because we beheaded the king. There's this distrust of the fact that if we are told something, well, if we don't really agree with that, no matter the authority above us, we'll make them know. We had a lot of protests because we had some laws concerning new retirement conditions the last few months, not weeks. And this is very French. I have an English friend who said to me, "Oh, you French, when you don't like something, we just burn cars."
We're
you take to the street and you burn cars.
Yeah, my friend told me that basically protesting it's a common pastime in France.
Yeah,
And that you should even have an app of like, okay, what are the interesting protests around me? Oh, I feel like okay, I can protest this.
Yeah, it's the so there are some drawbacks,
and
course,
also
but some good things.
Yeah, and also like if French go to protests, like things are gonna burn.
Yeah,
this is not gonna be just shouting and singing. No, things are gonna burn.
No. At one point, some windows will be broken. You can be sure of that. You can be sure. It's the way things are. There was a president who said something like, "Beware of the French people because they held the king, then they cut off his head."
Mm-hmm.
So things can be changing a lot.
And it's also interesting because France is known for its nobility throughout, especially Middle Ages. French knights, French nobles. Mm-hmm. It's a very, very. Again, if you would think of a country that would be proud of its nobility, again, it would be France. Although that might be a misconception.
Oh, yeah, yes, I would say that it's.
So it's like respect and distrust at the same time.
Yeah, it's the. When people visit Le Château de Versailles, where the kings used to live, they'll say, it's very common to hear when you think about all the money they had and people were starving.
Mm-hmm.
It's something of the past. It's even if I read that the Queen of England was very. I mean, the British monarchy was quite popular in France, but it's really something of the past. And when we see, there's the Earl is the heir to the throne, they will be seen as very conservative and something of the past, and not someone really to be trusted. It's these are these mixed feelings. But we love them because, the castle, because they are part of our history. But we know it's a history. It's history. It means it's gone. It's still here. You can pay if you want to. But even nowadays, just more than nearly 250 years later, people talk about, our politicians mention the French Revolution all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
like when you had the latest protests, one MP just had a sign, so he was punished for that, but sanctioned for that. It was we beheaded the king. We can do the same with Macron.
I've heard about this one.
Yeah, it's it can be quite violent.
Yeah, as every now and then we would talk with my friend about culture and politics. And we would often go back in time, like, oh yes, of course, but World War II happened because of this, so because Treaty of Versailles, and World War I, and this happened because of this. It always ends up at French Revolution. I mean, it can go further back, but the French Revolution is...
Napoleon with Poland.
That's an interesting bit. Like, it's... Napoleon is a controversial figure, to say the least, but overall, in Poland... he is liked.
Yeah. Overall. And in France, when was the anniversary of his greatest victories, you had no celebrations. Not at all. No one. Nothing. There's something with Napoleon structured modern France. He invented high school. He killed many Spaniards. He did many things. But there's clearly this this paradox with Napoleon. And of course, yes, Napoleon did some good things, some terrible, horrible things. But we can say that that was quite a mess with what he did. Yeah. And many things also led, to the...
Yeah, in Poland, it's crazy. In Poland, he is remembered. He is thought of fondly, mostly. He's even present in the Polish national anthem. Oh. I don't know if you know this.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's basically it's when Napoleon Bonaparte has showed us how to fight.
Oh,
it's so there's this, but it also it boils down to the period. I think it's 19th century, when Poland for 100 of years was just erased from map of Europe. It was partitioned by Prussia, Russia, and Austria. And just Polish people loved anyone who would just care about Polish independence in any way. And Napoleon recreated Poland as a puppet state of France. He didn't do it out of like warm feelings towards Poles. He wanted them to serve in the French army, but still, he gave us independence in some way. So short-lived, whatever, but to this day, Napoleon is remembered.
Yeah. So you see in France, so you have in Paris, you have subway stations with names of victories, but the celebrations were, you have no celebrations concerning him, even if he's, I mean, what he created he restructured the law system. He did so many things. But yeah, that was a long time ago, but still used by politicians nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah, France, it's interesting culture, to say the least, especially thinking about Napoleon. Currently France is known, the stereotype is that French are cowards. So it's a stereotype. They have
guns too. Retreat. They have guns too.
Yeah, like, what's the French battle flag? It's a white cross on the white background, and so on and so on.
Yeah, and there's another one. That was in the comic book Wolverine. That's champagne and surrendering to the Germans are the two things that the French do the best.
Yeah, but historically, not really. French was pretty aggressive in many ways. Like, for sure, didn't shy away from a fight historically. Oh, for sure.
No, they didn't. But all of that came from the debacle during the Second World War, the beginning in 1940, because everyone, I mean, no one would expect Germany to come to Paris in that short span of time. And this is how
I think it's again a Polish perspective. Okay, a Polish perspective for sure is that the Western allies have betrayed us, but some people argue that French actually had the military to stop Germany pretty early.
Yeah, they had, but it was outdated, and the generals were all still thinking that war would be a war such as the First World War.
Yeah,
and that's also why the General de Gaulle just fled to England. But
I've done some research. There is this context. Yeah, one of the reasons that people don't think about it, that during World War I, France was pretty devastated. It's like the idea of having another war was in 1940 was pretty. You have to take that into account.
Yeah, and I think there's something like only 5 villages in France which have no mentions of people being killed either during the First or Second World War. The eastern part of France was, it's. I was a guide on the landing beaches in before being a teacher in Normandy, and if we want to get rid of the last bomb from the First and Second World War, we'll have to wait for 5 centuries. And 2 weeks ago in Caen, a bomb was discovered. When you have heavy rains, you have bombs in the fields just pumping out. Not always, of course, not always, but it's still here. It's still here. But to go back to this stereotype of French being cowards, it really comes from these. It started as a joke in the US after the Second World War, or as the French being dirty, and it's still. But it's just. Every country has jokes on another country.
Yeah.
So.
And especially Americans. Yeah, Americans have a good. They have reach recently, so they can tell their jokes more loudly.
Yes.
The dirty one is interesting because okay, the coward joke, I guess Poland can have some, like, would be leaning to believe in that one because World War II. But dirty, like, that's weird one. That's pretty much only...
So
it's weird to believe in that if you're European. French dirty.
It's also... I read a guide that was given to the GIs. It was a little guidebook given to the GIs coming to France. And you have clear passages saying that everything is... so French don't have access to soap a lot because, of course, that's the war. And that's something that stayed. And I remember that was in the 90s. Someone asking us if we... what was it? No, he came with his own toilet paper.
How interesting.
He was American. And... I was in 2000 in Tennessee, and a student asked me if we had a common frontier with Germany. So it's also when this question is asked, you're like, yes, check your geography and check your history. You'll see. When you have this question, it clearly says that the power of stereotypes. Once it's in, it stays. Everyone thinks that you'll play rugby everywhere in Australia. Nothing is more wrong than that. It's not even the most popular sport in Australia. You have that everyone is surfing everywhere. That's wrong. We all have these cliches, and there's in the sheet you gave me that what would be the stereotype of a French NPC. What I would say, it would be arrogant. It would be know-it-all and patronizing. He would have a terrible French accent. He would not be a seducer, but if he could do something like cutting the line is very French. Cutting the line is very French. And
it all fits.
It would be the shrewd guy. In French, we say malin, soyez malin, and you have this slogan quite regular. But he will be like, oh, you know what? I managed to get this. I managed to get that. This is the French one.
Interesting. Again, like I see parallels with Poland, and like not in the places I would expect. So first of all, I remember that there were some people that I think visited Poland either 90s or maybe later that. They visited from the West, I don't know, Germany, England, whatever, that brought their own food because they thought Poland just, is still deep in communism, doesn't have food in stores. And it was, at this point, it was still somewhat poor, but a normal country with stocked shelves. So those stereotypes...
I read, and that was a comic book from... that was Black Panther. That was the issues. I would say 1990, something like that. There was a depiction of Paris. You had cars, and the cars were clearly cars from the 1920s. It was like as if time had stopped. You see, this is the general perception. I have to say that now it tends to disappear thanks to globalization, to the internet, thanks to videos you could see, and but in many ways that's the...
Yeah, but for some people, like France is this country frozen in time in some ways. I guess maybe if you want to picture Europe in some sort of way, you want, even like artistically, you want to have, if you want to differentiate it from the US, which is modern Western country, and Europe is this, last century modern country, it's, I guess France is the quintessential place you would do that too.
It's the...
So in some ways, maybe France is a stereotype magnet.
Yes, I think so. There's this Netflix series, Emily in Paris. And Emily in Paris, it's the Paris you would dream of. I mean, just everyone is nice because, come on, just Parisians. Wow.
That's the last thing based on what I've heard from French people, that's the last thing you would expect of Parisians.
That's not that everyone is nice. I would say that, no, I think that in it, they are described sometimes as not being nice, but just it's... really just even if I have some very good friends and my family in Paris,
I've heard that basically all French people outside of Paris hate Paris.
Yeah, because when especially the way they behave outside of Paris, but you have this typical cliche Paris, and some people just complain, "Oh, this is we look like stupid people when you watch this show." But they also tend to forget that when we try to imitate Americans, and we're doing the same with the same cliches and stereotypes. They are not all fat, stupid people. So it's even if they tend to be quite loud, but it's the way things are. It's just and that's always what I tell to my students. That's what I tell my students. It's that. When you talk to someone from a country, just remember this is not a member of the government and is not responsible for the history of his country.
Yeah.
Just I had French students going and talk to French students who talk to Chinese students. Telling them, "Oh yes, you kill people." I said, "No, you don't say that to them. I don't care. I mean, they're not responsible for that, and this is how things are."
Even historically, like I don't know how many majority support governments do you have? Like many, especially modern day, many countries are ruled over like by minority opinion governments. And like there's no other option because there is no majority opinion government that most people would support. It's just the smallest minority or some sort of compromise. A lot of people in the country don't agree with the rest of the country.
And that's also global. And you have less understanding. It's either black or white. If you're not with me, you're against me. There's no middle ground. And it makes things harder. It's harder to communicate. That's for sure. And I can see that in French society, or even just in the role-playing game community. I clearly see that. I mean, which time we tend to say something. Some people, "Oh, you don't have to say that. Why did you say that? Oh, you are such a conservative person. Oh no, you're such a woke person." Each time you're about to say hello, you're getting sued.
This conflict also seems to be global in Poland. I guess in Poland we kind of imported from US, interestingly. So a lot of people would listen. I mean, I listen to Western media a lot, like US, British, whatever. So, and in many ways we do import the thinking, and we do import the issues we care about.
Yeah, and
that if not for the internet would just not exist in Poland, but Polish people would argue between themselves about it. Whatever.
This is what we see, and we clearly see that in role-playing game products. And the good thing, where is it? Yes, this is the latest. So it's Farce Macabre. It's from the Spanish. It's for Call of Cthulhu from Spanish director Alex de la Iglesia. I'm sorry, I have a terrible Spanish accent. So it's for Call of Cthulhu, but it's written by this Spanish author and director. He made several horror movies, and you can clearly see the way he's writing is not the way Chaosium is writing. It's not the American style of writing.
Okay.
And you have issues that are American issues that are now getting imported to Europe, but this is not the issues we used to have, or it was in different way. And each country has its own problems, but they cannot be solved the American way. And this is very divisive at the time.
Yeah, it doesn't help. Like adding even more issues to the conflicts doesn't seem to help. Yeah. As for the French, so I worked with some amount of French people by now, and like business or just colleagues, and I would say, okay, so there is one trait that actually you've already mentioned that I would say, overall, French people seem to have. And I would say, like, I mean, no offense, but
no, don't worry. I like it.
Overall, French people think they're better than you.
Of course.
Oh,
of course. So. How dare you? No, yeah.
Of course, but we are.
Yeah, I mean I've traveled a lot, and the only people I saw smoking at in New York at the airport were French. I remember I came to them. I said to them, "Don't do that. I mean, just they won't like it." Mm-hmm. Someone came, told them to stop. They faked putting the cigarette out, so they resumed smoking, and then they came back. So the security came back, and there were quite a lot, and I never saw them again. So it's the fact that I told you that French sometimes tend to be above the rules, mm-hmm. and the cutting the line, or when we see the British just waiting for the bus, and you have all this very beautiful line, we're like, wow. And also, because I'm a teacher, and this is something I've always said: when you teach other countries' histories, we tend to focus on the bad aspects. Mm-hmm. That if you ask anything about Australia, because I study a lot Australia, mm-hmm. they'll say, "Oh, the Australians, they killed the Aboriginals." Or Americans, so many guns, they're all fat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or the English, you can't trust the English, and look at what they did with slavery. And we tend to emphasize the darker aspects of countries, but concerning our own history, wow, come on, what do you mean that the army just tortured people in Algeria? Really? No. I don't believe you. So it's this way, and yes, they tend to think that that they're right, and that they are about, and that they look patronizing. That's funny because I could see that everywhere I went when people talked about the French. That's and mm-hmm. at one point, and this is also what I felt, and I also behaved sometimes as a French, like, you should know that, but I did not know this point, that point, and that point, and just I realized that they were fully right, and that I should have not said anything. Mm-hmm. But that was funny. That was a good joke, and it ended up with a beer. But it's something really that we cannot disagree on that. I mean, just mm-hmm. I fully agree with you. There's this arrogant, and this is why I mentioned it. I mentioned it first, the arrogant people, because mm-hmm. we have this very.
It might be. It might be just temperament. That maybe the French, on average, would be more assertive, and maybe more disagreeable. So, like, it's like not a. It's a trait that pisses a lot of people off, understandably, but. It's a trait, right? It's assertiveness. Assertiveness also has its uses, right?
And there's also something, for instance, that when I used to take some students to the United States, and they were in families, mm-hmm. and I told them, be very aware of one thing: is that sometimes you'll meet someone. You'll spend a wonderful time, and they'll be like, "Oh, how are you?" and hugging, and mm-hmm. And you'll think that you've met your new best friend. Mm-hmm. And the day after, you'll see this person from a distance, and they just wave at you and go on. And that's that. And that happened to me a few times. And this is this. I would say that if you compare, for instance, Americans and French. French are more serious, mm-hmm. and we have the tu and the vous when you meet someone. If it's a friend, you say tu. If it's someone you don't know, you mm-hmm. say vous. And we tend to be quite uptight, when we see people dressed, we're like, no, you should not dress like that. That's the way. Yes, we are. We are more rigid. My Australian friends always said that to me. They said to me, with you, it's always no first. It's always, we don't change the plan first. And she's right. See, we have a plan, we stick to it. If you see, concerning, for instance, the Americans, it's they go for it, they make a mistake, they try to adjust. In France, we talk, we have a saying, it's a stupid person who walks will always go farther than an intellectual sitting down.
Okay. Which is true, by the way.
Which is true, yes. Yeah. And this is the way things are. Things in France take a lot of time to change. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult. So is it, perhaps it's the same everywhere, but that's the feeling we have.
Okay. Yeah, but for what you're saying is not maybe not because of traditionalism, which I guess maybe like would be more present in Poland, for example. I think by temperament, Polish people are more traditional, so like less open to avant-garde, to new trends, new fashions. Just no, that's whatever has worked for our grandparents is good enough for us.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems that France may be more set in their ways because of disagreeability. Like, a new idea? No, just get out. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, it's
no being the default answer, just the
yeah.
It might be the same trait that pushes you to the streets to burn stuff when you don't like something. It's the fighting spirit of the French.
Yes, and also that, and especially when we have these new laws about retirement, it's also having less. It's the conditions won't be as favorable as they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's really this fight for keeping a certain way of life,
mm-hmm.
and it's but once again, I cannot imagine. I cannot imagine citizens not protesting because they want to lengthen your years of work. It's
mm-hmm.
But if we have to be honest, for instance, when do we see protests in England, for instance? Never.
Yes, it seems to be more rare. Yeah. Okay, this is a random question, but why not? Live action role playing, LARPs. Do you have it? And how big it is?
You have a very strong community. I'm not in it. I have friends in it, but COVID-19 was a disaster to them. But yes, it's still here, and it's going quite well.
Mm-hmm.
But I cannot say anymore.
Okay. I remember in Poland. This ties me to the question of demographics. So,
mm-hmm.
Who plays in France? For example, like what's the men, women? What's the ratio more or less? In Poland, for example, back in the day when the hobby started, I think it was 100% men at first. Then it was, for some time, I think it was stable around like 90% men, 10% women, mm-hmm. more or less. And over the years, right now we're at the 75% men, 25% women, roughly more or less estimated based on some polls. Although in LARPing, it's 50-50.
I cannot tell you about LARP, but mm-hmm. I would say that, we tend to go towards the 25% of women in role-playing games. It's something good, and but the average population of playing role-playing games is getting older. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Okay, so so new people come to the hobby, but not that much.
Yeah, that's what was said. What I said earlier is that we have the children playing, mean just when I mean the children of the players playing, and there's something that is an obsessing that's obsessed. Sorry, something that obsesses the publishers is having younger players, and this is what Wizards have done with Dungeons and Dragons of 5th edition, having new players, younger players. It's but when I go to conventions, I clearly see young children being with their parents, and now we tend to see, I would say, people around their 20s, but they're more around 30s. But these younger players are players who appreciate actual plays, or they are streamers. We are still in this pattern where these are the older people printing books. And for instance, at Rôliste TV, our audience is between 35 and 50, and it's 50% of our audience. But we are getting a little bit younger, but it's still it's still all. The thing is, it's what will happen in 10 years from now, because we'll have players retiring. And what will happen? What games? I'm pretty sure that there will be a massive change in games being played.
Okay.
Because we still have the connection. Players now still have the connection with the beginnings of role-playing games, because they were there, because they had the games at the time. But when this generation is gone, what will happen?
Yeah. Do you think it will be all D&D? Because in Poland,
not in France for sure.
Yeah, but the newer generations, for example, seem to start with D&D 5th edition way more than they do with other games.
Yes, they do that because they, price-wise, that's the least expensive.
D&D is least expensive.
What I mean, it's the, if you buy the essential kit, D&D, in the box you have the scenario, pre-generated characters, screen, cards, and some other stuff for 20 euros.
Okay.
When someone comes to me, one of my students, because I teach in college, when they come to me and say, "Oh, sir, I've seen your videos, blah, blah, blah. I would like to start. Which game do I buy? What can I buy?" My first question is, how much money do you have? Because there's what you can have. You can have this box 20 euros, or you can buy some other games 50 euros. And you're not sure that you'll like it.
Yeah, I was thinking D&D. I was thinking like 3 books, the box set, the player's guide. Is all of this? No, okay. So like for 20 euros, do you get all of this, or do you just get player's handbook and?
Because we tend not we don't play the way the game is not played the way it used to be played. I mean by that you have to read the book. You have to be sure you like it. That's not the and if you want to play Dungeons and Dragons, you have to buy the 3 books. It will be around 120 euros.
Yeah,
and that it will need some time, and you have to be sure that you'll play. When you buy the box, the starter kit or the essential kit, it's just 20 euros.
Okay. And it's good for a couple of games, right?
It's good for a couple of games, for more than one, because the scenario is quite long. And if you want to buy the game after, you just have a set of rules, and everything you have, except for the scenario, of course, but everything you have in your box will be used again. And it's 20 euros. You cannot have another game with that price. So that the question and the issue, and gone is the time where you would play for 10 years with one game.
Yeah, I think that was the assumption of many games back in the 90s, maybe up to late 90s.
Mm.
Yeah, even the character progression was balanced in such a way that it would assume, come on, like at least a year worth of weekly games.
Mm.
Oh.
So I don't know. Really, this is something I don't know. This is something I think a lot about. It's what will happen when this generation is gone.
Maybe it won't matter anyway in 2 years because of artificial intelligence.
Yes,
which will be running games like
there's a role-playing game that was illustrated through artificial intelligence, which was quite funny. The author at first refused to acknowledge the fact, so he deleted all the comments. Then he stopped deleting them, but did not mention that he deleted them. And it's
like everyone was expecting this, like those games would have to appear as just products sooner or later.
Yeah, and it's I think that for a game to be a success, it needs to be a trademark, and this is what Dungeons and Dragons has become. I mean, just you have that. You have this stupid thing I bought. I'm such a sucker, and it's the Dungeons and Dragons is beyond games now. It's you have Monopoly, you had the movies, and this is how it will. And Wizards said it. They said that the future of Dungeons and Dragons is not through the games. The games will still be here. The supplements will be here, but the majority of their money will be through D&D Beyond and other merchandising, such as the miniatures or everything you can have from the paraphernalia you can get from Dungeons and Dragons. But they have this power in France. For instance, Roll and Play is the most popular 5e. I mean, just the sales are far, far, far below Dungeons and Dragons. You cannot compare them.
Yeah, the economy of scale and marketing, I guess. Okay, back to French France, like more French, the meat of a discussion. So. A typical game expectations. So if I were to join a game in France, modern day, right now, let's say I'm a new player. What do you think I should learn about the French expectations? Like, what would be what would I need to know to fit with the French culture of play? Or is there such a thing as a French culture of play, or is it like separate cultures?
I don't think there's a separate culture of play. The thing is to just ask about the atmosphere the game master wants around the table, if you can crack some jokes or not.
So there's no I have to bring wine to the game.
This is what I was about to say.
Like, of course,
ask about what you need to bring. So I have to say that beer is far more popular than wine around the table.
Interesting.
And pizza and sweets, candies, whatever you call them, and. It's funny.
A little bit of pain chocolat.
Oh no, because pain chocolat you'll have them in the morning. But I just finished a Firefly campaign. Excellent game, Firefly, inspired from the TV show.
Yeah,
and you see, it's very French because one of the players brought some croissant and pain chocolat. And I said, "Where did you get them?" He said that was from the union meeting we had this morning. So
that sounds very French.
That was very French, and you're not expected to be something or to play in a certain way. Just as long as it doesn't ruin the gaming experience of the others, everything is fine.
Is it expected of the players to be invested into the story, or bring characters with elaborated backgrounds, or
it really depends. There's the joke that you just wrote a 2-page background and the game master went another direction.
yeah, okay,
It's really, I don't think there's typical French way.
Okay.
Because, you know,
Mm-hmm.
most of the advice in English, I mean, in English written games are the same. So you read them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that.
Yeah, I actually feel like thinking out loud here that I might remove this question from the template, because it seems to, again, but maybe I'm still in the European circle of countries, so it might be similar because of this. But maybe it's like the culture of play might matter more. So like if you're playing a traditional game or like OSR game, this is gonna determine way more than whether you're French, Polish.
So. I've played with American players, with Australian players, and I didn't really see a difference.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Perhaps Americans love miniatures and fighting more, but apart from
overall,
that,
yeah. Okay, yeah. That's something learned from talking about tabletop RPGs around the world, I guess. That's in some ways we're very the same. Settings and themes. Is it like there's some other like some fun favorites that you joke about that, you know, every game should have? Is like, for example, Poland, a game that's set in fall, in autumn. There's rain falling, it's cold, it's autumn, and it's gonna suck. You're gonna suffer.
I'm not sure that. For my part, I believe in seasons. I mean, just when it's summer and it's hot outside, I don't like to play games in the dark and games where you cannot have sunburns, as I tend to say. But I don't think about. I can't think about some French themes as well.
Mm-hmm. And what about? Do you prefer French settings? So, for example, Call of Cthulhu. The default setting of Call of Cthulhu is New England, it's northern United States. But I'm assuming there are some French settings, or just do people...
There was one in Paris, and there's one in Marseille. Actually, that still needs to be published. It depends on people. For my part, the escapism of role-playing games means that I don't want to play in France. France, I want to be somewhere else. So the USA is, of course, by default a place, or England, because I also know their history. So, but it's I don't want to see in one of my gaming session the same bus stop I used to wait for.
But there could be monsters, so that's
there could be a monster. This is something very English. I mean, just when you take Doctor Who, all of a sudden the garbage cans over there are actually aliens, but that's not in the French. That's not in the French themes.
I see.
You can have that. You have some historical games or esoteric games, such as Nephilim, where you can have that, and that's part of it. So I fully agree. But when you have modern games, for my part, I don't want to play because also when you play, if you say you say something, it's in Paris. If you have someone from Paris, it will tell you, "Oh no, it's better to go there." Or no, it doesn't take 20 minutes to go from this part to the. I mean, it's fiction, so just let's try to dream big.
So basically, you don't want to visit Paris, even in real world or in fiction. You just don't.
I've seen settings from Paris in Mutants and Masterminds, or there's this game called Uprising. It's from Dystopian Universe, and you have Les Citoyens. It's in Paris, but everyone speaks English, and it's always strange when you see, and this is written, "Vive la résistance." It's always strange to read that, but it's we are from. Yeah, it's. I'm not enthused by settings in France, and usually I don't think they are really good.
Sure. I wonder if it connects to the you mentioned before that this aspect of adventure, the dreams of a dragon, of exotic places, adventure story, and why sit in France?
Because even if it's in the United States, it means that you travel.
Yeah. I have to know that questions. Like if I do England, let's see if it is English thing that they like to be just in their hometown, but a little bit of adventure. Okay, in some ways, Lord of the Rings is a British adventure. You start in a British Shire, you go on expedition, but then you go back, and there's nothing better than a tea and a quiet life.
And my sister lives in Paris. She sees the Eiffel Tower every day. Okay. So it's, you want to play in Paris? Oh, great. So I want to play somewhere else.
Yeah, that makes sense. We were talking about a French NPC, a stereotypical French NPC. So if I were to include some French NPCs in our game, you already mentioned the sly guy who cuts the lines, who's who is disagreeable, who maybe thinks he's better than others.
Disagreeable, but disagreeable.
Okay, in terms of what he wants and what are his plans, the default answer is no. If
he knows, or he knows what is best, or he thinks he knows what is best for the group, and sometimes he'll go his own way, just to bring this or that, and having a smirk, bringing it. This is this French way, or you have the old stiff teacher. Knowing a lot of things.
Okay. But would you say those NPCs are also cultured? And then, artistic, maybe experience in, maybe maybe artists, maybe experience in arts?
I know it's the cliche of French people knowing a lot of things. Trust me.
It's not true.
Trust me, that's not true. Because I can show you my students' tests. But yeah, it's in the cliche, and perhaps not being such an urban person, being perhaps loving the countryside, loving the old churches, and some nice places to be around, or having a cafe he loves to go, not too crowded, having some memories over there, knowing the owner, but being not too crowded. You see, there's this movie Amélie Poulain.
I've seen this one actually.
It was really French in many aspects, and it was it was a fantasized Paris, of course, but the
spirit is there, right?
Yes, completely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know this one. Interesting. So, what about aristocracy? Because France is again associated with aristocracy. Do you care about noble characters, monarchs, aristocrats, nobles,
I would say,
or killing aristocrats as a thing, like evil aristocrats, and needing to, I don't know, behead them?
More than that, because honestly, I don't think we care about them. Actually, that's because you don't see them on TV, you don't see them on books. Or if you see them on TV, they are on very conservative outlets. So, but talking about NPCs, there's some sort of there is this character called Cyrano de Bergerac from the play. There's the panache. The panache is, and actually that's the. When he dies, he says that I have nothing, but I'm dying, but I'm taking the panache with me. So the way of acting, to have some grand gestures, this is it's something that is very French. In many ways, we prefer the beautiful loser to the winner. Before we won the World Cup in 1998, the game, the football match everyone would be talking about was France-Germany in 1982 during the World Cup, where Poland finished fourth. And beating France for the third game. And that game was lost. It was 3-2. And in overtime, we were leading. We lost in the shootouts. We were leading 3-1 in overtime, and the Germans just scored twice, and then they beat us. And that was the reference. And that game had all the dramatic elements because the German goalkeeper really assaulted one of the French players who was knocked out. Had it been played now, it would have been red card and goal. But at the time, the ref was looking elsewhere. And you had to wait for the France winning the World Cup for this love of beautiful losers. For instance, when France lost the final against Argentina, everyone, the game was heroic. We lost it, but we gave everything. And Cyrano de Bergerac, this character, is also the epitome of some of the French character. We'll fight. We know it's hopeless, but it's still beautiful to fight for it. That's why we'll do it. This is roughly the translation of one thing he said. And there is this, and I can clearly see that a French NPC having been powerful and just deciding to do something, he knows he's lost, but he does it anyway. And this is very French. This love of the second one. There's a there was a cyclist, Raymond Poulidor, and that's a French expression. When you say you are a Poulidor, it means that you are the perennial second.
Okay.
And he was more loved than the champions of the time because he would give everything he had. Number two, we don't care because he did everything. He did everything to win. And also because you identify more to the second one than to the first, because there's only one first. There's the first one. The first will win. The rest of them are all losers. This is why we tend to identify more as regular citizens to the second one. So it's and we all prefer Little David over Goliath.
Yeah.
So it's very French.
Do you have like a concept of moral victory
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah,
we only have that.
Yeah. So that seems.
No, I wouldn't say I only have that, but I'm a huge American football fan, and that's really interesting when you compare journalists and how people talk, because you see that Americans hate the term moral victory, and they have this saying.
They just like the victory. Yeah.
Yes, there's no ugly win. There's just a win.
Yeah, that's very American things to do.
Yeah. And we have this concept of moral victory. We have the La Coupe de France and I think you have it when you have the better teams playing against the weakest one. Paris Saint-Germain against this team from the village. I mean, everyone loves that, and everyone, of course, everyone roots for the underdog.
That's interesting, because similar to Poland but different. I feel like, and again, maybe in the period of history when Poland was partitioned, this period when we also I think France was very popular. Also, French fashion, French language was popular in Poland. Like the court fashion would be French fashion. And yeah, Poland was fond of uprisings. and most of them, if not all, failed, and like in some ways were a net loss for the country. Young people dying for the ideals that just achieved nothing or even made the operation worse. But the argument would still be raised that it had to be done because it is right. It is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And we have to fight for ideals. But I think Poland would argue more like, no, actually, this was a victory because like the blood of the martyrs was needed to wake up the West and to do something. Or
all civics. If you look thoroughly, you'll find victories everywhere.
Yeah, and there's this concept of Poland being the Messiah of the nations, like that Poland is the Christ on the cross who suffers for the rest of the nations of Europe against the tyrannies. It's like, this is where, I mean, this appeared, I think, before World War II, but like World War II, this is also this association. Yeah, that we were hit the hardest by the Nazism and the communism.
Yeah, definitely.
And in some ways we suffered for the rest of Europe, but but different because like it seems that the French, this French NPC, let's say, would like more consciously know that he's gonna lose.
Oh no,
because like the Polish freedom fighter who participates in uprising believes that he will win. He's just delusional. He maybe he suspects, but he's like, this is right. This is what I have to do.
Know. If you go with Cyrano once again, you would know. You would know. But the beautiful gesture, the noble gesture.
It's like a willing sacrifice for the romanticism, for the values.
Yeah, there's something like that. Yes.
Interesting. Okay, fits very well into the chivalric culture of knights.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, indeed.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay. Tabletop RPGs and media. Any famous... you've already shown me some, but tabletop RPGs made in France, maybe especially games that can be played outside of France, maybe were translated into...
So translated, you had Fate Forge. So dragons in French, enfin dragon. Translated in Worm, you play during the prehistoric times. It was translated by Chaosium. And that's something we would like more, and I know that publishers would like their games to be translated into English, but you need to find the right people, and it's expensive, and this is why we don't have many games translated into English.
I'm reading some of the questions from our patrons, and one of our patrons mentions in nomine.
Oui, in nomine satanis, yeah. So in French, it's in nomine satanis. Satan.
Interesting.
And
it might have been censored in Poland for that reason.
Yeah. The game was translated by Steve Jackson Games, but all sensitive issues were removed.
Yeah, it's like the player plays the character and the weapon of another player.
This is Bloodlust.
Yes, and also Bloodlust,
and by the same author. But you see, it's the where do I have it here? There are some various differences. For instance, between French versions and American ones, you have Stormbringer. The French version had some bare naked women, and when the game Elric, don't I have it? Elric was released in the US. They took the French pictures, but of course they covered the breast.
Yeah.
That's one of the main differences.
I see. Okay, any book or maybe especially movie recommendations that... Okay, so you mentioned Amélie as one, I guess, a good movie if you want to get the spirit of France, I guess.
Yeah, there's one you can have. You can watch. It's called Spiral. and it's a French series, but it was the English version was made. I mean, when I mean English version, I think it's because the dialogues were subbed by the BBC. Spiral. It's a French show. It's a crime show in Paris. It's really, really good.
Okay.
Apart from that, I think that's the same everywhere. You just have these big old dumb Marvel superheroes, superheroes movies, and
blah, but blah. Maybe something about the French history, like some historical period. Any cool movies that might not be known?
Yeah, there was one which is called Les Brigades du Tigre. Le Tigre being Clemenceau. It's in the. Come on, just don't want to say any mistakes. It's in the early. It was made as a movie, and it's just before the war, the First World War, and it's because with the advent of automobiles, that was the first motorized crime unit, and it's a nice movie. It talks a lot about it says a lot about France at the time, and apart from that, I cannot give you off the top of my mind any examples.
Although France seems to be represented a lot in media overall. I mean, with your role in history, it's like hard not to know about France. Although, again, so maybe that's a question. Because with modern media, a lot of representation is created by Americans or British, just the English-speaking expert. What do they get right and what do they get wrong about France?
The arrogant stuff is quite right. It's funny. And what they get wrong. These are cliches that, especially when it's made by Americans, you're pretty sure that there'll be a seducer. I think, and I'm not that sure that French will be seducers. And it's sometimes it seems like French people would just be lurking around just to talk to women. I've never seen that.
I've heard like great lovers, maybe not seducers, but lovers.
Yeah, this is what they say, but I have many female friends that could tell you that's not right. That's not true. That's that. It's just because the way because the French, when we say hello, we kiss. And even if it's a little bit less now with COVID-19, I can see that.
Do you actually kiss, or is it just the head against head and you kiss?
No, you actually kiss. You actually kiss
on the cheek.
On the cheek, and some parts of France it will be 1, it will be 2, it will be 3, it will be 4. It's always you never know.
And 4 is up to 3 is even it would happen in Poland sometimes. Again, older generations typically. Eastern European thing. Sometimes older people would kiss you on the mouth. No, it's just like
no.
I'm talking like your grandfather. Like you might meet your grandfather. He would kiss you on the mouth as a greeting.
Okay, no. We don't
no tongue, that. Of course, but just,
it's the yes, you would kiss, and a boy would also kiss a boy, and on the cheeks, and that would not be assuming anything. So and also personal space. Your personal zone tends to be smaller for the French than for Americans, for instance.
Okay.
So it's the
and so you would just rummage through their pockets. And
social distances are smaller for the French, and this is, I think, one of the origins of the
smelly stereotype.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe. Any events or conventions that famous in France? Like, how does the scene look like, more or less?
Yes, there's one in Lyon every the first week of October, 2 days, and you have everyone.
Mhm.
But it has changed a lot also with COVID-19, because before that, the French publishers, if you wanted to meet them, it was just you had to go somewhere physically. But now with everything being remote, it's easier to have some interviews. And we have one this afternoon, for instance, with one of the French publishers.
Okay. Lyon. It's
Lyon is
it's with Y. Like Lyon
is the third biggest city.
Yeah,
of,
that's where my colleague I work with for last year in my office. That's where he comes from.
The Black Book editions, they are from Lyon. You have a lot of, and one of the biggest role-playing stores is actually from Lyon as well.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, we're nearing towards the end. I have some this last couple of questions on things I forgot about in the meantime. A little bit of trivia. Did you know that France is quintessential Western Europe? It's the most Western Europe country of all countries.
Yes, quintessentially.
Because Spain can be considered Southern Europe. Britain can be considered Northern Europe or not a part of Europe.
Yeah.
And Germany can be considered Central Europe. But France is considered nothing but Western Europe.
Yes, you're right.
So I was looking at some maps to determine whether Poland is Eastern Europe or Central Europe, and there were maps of different divisions, and your countries would be highlighted more if it would be associated with this term. And France was it was nothing but Western
in France,
Europe.
we would say more being a Latin country.
Okay.
This is what we would say. This is, for instance, what you said about being Western Europe is, of course, very logic, but that's perhaps
but Spain is more West.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Is it
yes,
West?
We'll say West.
Yeah,
but we talk about the Latin countries in France.
So Latin is considered. What is Latin country? Is France, Spain, Italy?
Italy and Romania. Romania is actually Latin. But for many, if you ask someone on the street, they won't know. They won't tell you. Oh, they won't think about Romania. But yes.
Yeah. Okay. Another question is the topics of: do you romance more during games? Like, is there more romance between NPCs, players, than maybe other characters? Do you like to have romance?
Once again, it's depending on the characters and depending on the players. And I know that when I play, I tend to have quite a strong psychological aspect. So there are some romance, some deaths, some comings and goings. But when you do so, I know my players, whether female or male players, and what I do, I ask questions about, so what are your character's feelings concerning this character, and if you want to, it's up to you. And but no, I don't think that you have more romance than in any of the other countries.
Yeah. So basically, this is we have debunked the stereotype of French being obsessed with romancing everything that moves.
No, we're not. We're not. As long as it doesn't get you some XPs, what's the point?
I think there are some games that give you experience for that. So that's one of the inventions of modern games, like giving experience for stuff other than killing monsters and getting treasure.
Yeah, that was the end of this capitalistic aspect of Dungeons and Dragons. You kill someone, you take his money.
Yeah, now that I think of it, that's very funny that this originated in America. Yeah, you get experience for money.
And you need to kill someone. It's really killing money, so to be more powerful.
Yeah, it makes sense with a like Western archetype of a hero, of a cowboy who comes in and solves issues with violence. His individualistic solves issues, goes away, but you're not really friends with him. He's not friends with anyone really. He's super independent.
Yeah, and that's why people hate role-playing games with levels, because to be honest, at one point you cannot play them, and it leads them to some completely nonsensical situations. You take Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, just someone is in front of you with a crossbow. You are level 5, so you have 40 hit points.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy says to you, "Follow me." It's a crossbow. I mean, just 10 points maximum, or 8. I don't remember. I mean, I have 40. I won't follow you. This is, and when you play, because I'm more of a D100 guy. I mean, just BRP. Here, you have played for 10 years. You've been playing for 10 years. The guy with the crossbow, you follow him because you know that if he scores 0-1, you're dead.
Yeah, in games like games like Warhammer, it's the European style seems to be more about everything's toned down and more grounded and realistic, and you can die from a crossbow.
And in RuneQuest, I mean, just at the time when the 2 games were released, it also created 2 churches, and you could clearly see that RuneQuest was the intellectual game, more realistic, and the Dungeons and Dragons was more about some sort of a catharsis. So you just expel all your feelings in one sessions, and would kill everyone.
Although I can argue 4 levels in an interesting way. There's this idea of scale. It's not very popular in European culture. It was, though. So, like, you have to go back to the Greek epics of Iliad, for example. Achilles and, like, Greek heroes it wasn't just their skills. They were also heroes. They were better than other people. They were on a different level. So, if a hero would fight common soldiers, he would win. That would be obvious. Like, maybe the worst thing he could do, he could defeat them unhonorably.
Yeah,
but he would win.
I agree.
And then Achilles would be on higher scale than other heroes, so he would just kill heroes like that. And you can see that. I've recently seen anime Vinland Saga, which is a Japanese take on a 11th century England with Danes, and that they bring in their Japanese sensibilities and their idea of scale. So there's one Viking who's like, there's 30 guys on this other boat. Like, normally this wouldn't be a problem, but I have a kid to protect. Because he's a higher scale, he can just kill them like that because they're minions.
I agree with that, but it's this is also what led to the murder hobo players. It's that we can do whatever we want because we know that no one will kill us in this small village.
Yeah, although also in with levels, like in an American game, you slowly earn the scale. Like, you climb the ladder of success in some way.
Yes.
Other than maybe like in Asian fiction, you would like train and you would achieve enlightenment, which would allow you to make a huge jump in a scale. And in America now, you grind it level by level.
Yeah.
And interesting. We'll see if I manage to get some interviews with Eastern Asian RPGs culture. Like, we'll see where the differences are, because so far I found that overall, Europeans and cultures with European heritage, like Canada, we are pretty similar. Overall. Like, even if I find something different, this is like 10-20% different than what I know from Poland.
Yeah.
So let's see where the journey takes us. I think that's it for me. From me, as for questions, but maybe there's something that people don't ask about France, but maybe you think it would be fun to know or important to know.
We are a complex country, but I think that can be said of every country. Of many European countries, because of our history.
You also have you have a mixed heritage, right? Like, you're like, okay, another question, but when do you consider that what's the beginning of France culture-wise? Isn't the Celts? Is it the Franks?
That should be considered as the Franks.
Franks.
Because they gave the name. And
some would consider like Romans, Roman and Gauls.
Yeah, but everything was intertwined. Mm-hmm. It's because where I live in Normandy, it's the land of people from the north, because that was given by the King of France to the Vikings.
And Normandy wasn't part of France for the longest time.
Actually, it was part of. I mean, when the Vikings occupied, it was given by the King of France, so the Vikings stopped their raids. Mm-hmm. The only remains are actually the names of the city. Apart from that, you don't see anything, because they're integrated very quickly. But the domain of Normandy was always special for the crown. You had the Duke of Normandy. I don't remember it very clearly, but you had this all this period where you had kings of France, but they had less power than the local lords, and then everything got unified. It's basically you would say the Franks with Clovis.
Mm-hmm. I see.
Would do that, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and the French history is complicated. I mean, every country is, I guess, but
especially when it lasts for just.
We're in Europe, like we have history spanning
thick books, very thick
1,000 years or more.
It's thousands of betrayals, of murders, or
political movements, culture shifts, migrations, wars. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for the glimpse. Welcome. Thank you for the glimpse in France, into France, into the culture, into RPGs.
Okay. It's. I'm really happy. I'm satisfied with more than satisfied. I'm very happy to have of having such a vivid this vivid pool of role-playing game authors. Mm-hmm. And you'll have very classic ones, very mainstream ones, indie, OSR. The thing is now, of course, you need time to read them. You need time to play them. Mm-hmm. And who knows what will become of all this collection? No.
Time will tell.
Yeah, my daughters won't play, so I'll tell them, sell them. Make money out of it. Make a lot of money and go and see the world. But it's the
you can also play games and visit other worlds in a game, you save money. So
yeah, you can do that. This is traveling without moving. That's perhaps one of the greatest things of concerning role-playing games. Well, thank you for having invited me. And
awesome. And our French listeners, I recommend visiting your channel.
Yeah, thank you.
Which is
Rôliste TV it has been 10 years now.
That's also pretty nice. 10 years.
Yeah, it's 10 years. 10 years.
Even like existing after 10 years of not breaking apart, not abandoning it.
That's not the first video, which is hard to come. It's always the second, as we said. Keeping the rhythm, keeping up the pace is the most difficult thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we know that, but we have like 3 years so far under our belt. That's not nothing. So
yeah, for us. It's just At one point, I don't remember the number of videos we made. I don't remember.
Okay.
And I sometimes forget about games I reviewed. I was like, this game rings a bell. Oh yes, and that was 6 years ago.
That happens. Again, thank you. Have a great day.
Mais de rien. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.